Hi everyone, Kris from Stone Age Gamer here, and welcome back to the gratuitous Rainbow Spectrum. I want to talk a little bit about this. This is my copy of Atari 50, the anniversary celebration, and it has impressed the ever-loving heck out of me. This, as somebody who started my video gaming life on the Atari 2600, this is a dream come true. It is an utter masterpiece of game preservation, collection, education. It's an interactive museum, and I just love it to death. And this is why. Atari 50, the anniversary celebration, is here, and I have some thoughts. If you follow Stone Age Gamer, you may have seen that I had a chance to interview Stephen Frost from Digital Eclipse a few months ago, and it was, without a doubt, one of the most fascinating interviews I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of. He somehow managed to get me even more hyped for Atari 50 than I already was, by answering every one of my, frankly, ridiculous questions with as much clarity as he was able to provide. What I learned was that an incredible amount of care went into the creation of Atari 50, and the hurdles they had to get past were many. The end result really does speak for itself. Every single inch of this collection sets a new standard for how retro game compilations should be approached. The depth of information on display is staggering, but it goes deeper than just having a ton of stuff to look at and play. What makes this truly special is how it's presented. A big part of the Atari 50 game itself is actually taking the time to learn the history of these games and why they're special, each and every one of them. The interactive timeline is an amazing innovation, and I can't get over how much fun it is to go point by point and learn not just about what Atari did right over the years, but how they failed as well. This is not a glorified history. There's a ton of information about their various failed ventures over the years as well, and it's so refreshing to see a company able to look back at their failures with a degree of reverence. Of course, it probably helps that the Atari of today is most certainly not the same Atari as the one I grew up with, but the point still stands. This new Atari displays an understanding of the brand better than many of the company's previous most recent iterations, and their willingness to allow Digital Eclipse to dive this deep into their history shows that. But it goes even deeper than just the concept of an interactive timeline. It's the execution that turns it from a fascinating trip down memory lane to a truly monumental experience. The way the visuals present the timeline in easily digestible bits, the subtle sound and animation of when a new part of the timeline has been completed, the animations in the background that keep everything lively, the high-resolution scans of promotional material, and right at the top of that list for me personally is the menu music. Composed by someone named Bob Baffy, whose work I'm largely unfamiliar with, this music does such an incredible job of setting the tone for this collection in an unbelievably magical way. In fact, you've been listening to it for the entirety of this video. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is, but when the music is at the forefront, it sounds beautifully 80s in tone, while still modern. There's something about the piano riff that sounds like a modern take on some sort of 70s or 80s inspirational commercial or infomercial or something, but then there's all these wonderful little Atari sound effects playing in the background in rhythm that keep it constantly reminding you of the sounds that made Atari classics so wonderful in the first place. Then it calms down and it's so open, it's so massively hollow that it elicits this feeling of being in an actual museum. It plays perfectly between boiling up your nostalgia, inspiring a sense of reverence for everything on display, then backing off to let the content itself take center stage. It is a work of art, and I love it. Speaking of art, the box art on display is something I really appreciate because it's actually correct. What you're looking at right here is a t-shirt that I got at Target a while back, and I've seen this image on a number of promotional materials over the years. I have never seen a Silver Label Yar's Revenge before. I know a Silver Label Asteroids exists, but it's hardly what I'd consider common, especially when the actual common box for Asteroids is right there. Or how about this? This is the Atari VCS digital store. I don't know if a Silver Label version of Adventure actually exists, but if it does, I've never seen it. Meanwhile, Atari 50 has the real deal across all categories, and it's glorious. Truly, truly glorious. Now, of course, there were omissions. There were always going to be omissions, especially on a collection spanning a company's 50 years in existence. These games are a huge bummer to not have on there, but it's ultimately understandable because of the various rights issues that would need to be navigated in order to include them. Still, it's hard to see such a comprehensive and lovingly built history ultimately left incomplete because these gigantic yet unavoidable holes are still there. It stings to have to tell the story of the Atari 2600 and not include Atari's own ports of enormously successful arcade classics. Atari's Space Invaders is arguably one of the best and most diverse versions of the game in existence. Atari's Defender is a magnificent port that simplified the arcade game's controls down to a joystick and button while maintaining the spirit that made the arcade game a classic. Pac-Man may not exactly be the best way to play Pac-Man, and that's being incredibly kind, but few would argue that Atari's treatment of the game isn't one of the most important points in the history of the American video game industry. And on the same token, Atari's E.T. Yes, it's widely reviled, but it's also a monumentally important piece of history. Of course, they were never going to score the rights to include E.T. or Pac-Man in this release, but it still stinks that it couldn't have been included for history's sake. Third-party stuff not being here is also a huge bummer, especially in terms of Activision's output. This right here is the actual birthplace of third-party publishing, Activision being the very first third-party video game publisher, and Activision's games like Pitfall, River Raid, Grand Prix, and Kaboom defined the console just as much as Atari's own output, so again, it feels incomplete without them being there. Due to the nature of Atari and how the company split back in the old days, this also left a lot of their own original properties in the hands of various other companies. This means that even some massive arcade hits with Atari's own name right on them couldn't be included in this collection. 720 was one of the earliest skateboarding video games, a genre that would eventually take over the world during the PlayStation era. Paperboy was a huge hit, which spawned a weirdly successful NES port. Freaking Gauntlet was an Atari property and a pioneer in the realm of multiplayer co-op gaming, but it is sadly nowhere to be found. When you think of the Atari Jaguar, you probably think of the puzzled masterpiece Flip-Out. Okay, that's actually just me and like 5 other people. It's actually Alien vs. Predator that most people think of, and maybe to a lesser degree, something like Pitfall, the Mayan Adventurer. But again, for obvious reasons, those games could not be included. The list goes on, but while those omissions are painful, they really do go to show just how well put together this collection is. That it can stand on its own and tell Atari's history without these colossal tentpoles is a testament to the skill and dedication of Digital Eclipse here. There's no question in my mind that they would have included every one of these games if they had been able to, especially Flip Out for the Jaguar. But they made the best of what was available to them, and what was available to them was quite a lot. This collection is a masterpiece, and such an important preservation of not only the games themselves, but the world around them. Historical context goes a long way in terms of making games like this feel worth playing in 2022. Even the bad stuff is worth looking into, because they all tell a story of a company that has at different times been both the most important name in the industry and almost completely irrelevant. Atari's 50th anniversary has been one heck of a ride, and this is the best possible way to finish it off. I could not reasonably be happier. So, if you follow this channel, maybe some of you have wondered what exactly is a gratuitous rainbow spectrum. It's this. This right here is a gratuitous rainbow spectrum. They used things like this rainbow spectrum on a lot of Atari products, really a lot of electronics and crazy products all throughout the 80s and the 70s and 80s, really. You saw it all the time, and our owner of Stone Age Gamer thought that was a funny name for our blog, the Gratuitous Rainbow Spectrum. But see, even that has a connection to Atari, which, I mean, so much of what we enjoy today in the world of video games stems from Atari, and this Atari collection, Atari 50, is outstanding. Yes, as I pointed out earlier, it's got a few holes in it. There are just, unfortunately, these things in the world of video games, these rights issues that gum up the works when telling proper historical accounts on how all of this stuff went. But even without those, it's such a great collection that really anybody who has even a passing interest in Atari as a brand or just the history of video games, you've got to try this thing out, no matter what platform you get it on. I have a Switch version. I'm going to get it on my Atari VCS when it comes out too, because I want to use the cool joystick controller for it. and I'm an Atari goon, so what do you want from me? But that's it, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw here today, please follow, comment, like, and subscribe, and let us know, what do you think of Atari 50? Did you really like this collection? Were you so disappointed that you didn't have Gauntlet on there that you decided not to buy it? Or what are your favorite things about it? How great is that menu music? Let us know. I'll talk Atari all day, every day with just about anybody. So sound off in the comments. Thanks again for watching. On behalf of all of us here at Stone Age Gamer, keep playing games. Just a national tragedy that this game did not make it in to Atari 50. To the little one. Come on, you controller.